the recording. Welcome everyone to the course, The Buddhist Path of Awakening. And we are going through the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chogyam Trungpa. This is a compilation of the talks that he gave over a course of 15 years, every fall at seminary. He would take anywhere from 150 to 250 or 300 students away for 3 months for a lot of sitting and study. He had students who taught courses as well, and every evening during the study periods, he taught. And these chapters are, condensations or bringing together of the different talks from those years, 15 years, into these 3 volumes. And the first is on the Hinayana, or foundational stage. The second is on the Mahayana, the path of the Bodhisattva. And the third is on the Vajrayana, the Tantric path. And we are on the second volume, on the Mahayana, covering tonight chapters 6 and 7. Mary is going to start with chapter 6. Sir.
All righty. Yes, chapter 6, Cultivating Wholesomeness. I really like this chapter, and I hope I can do it justice. To start with, in the Mahayana, our concern is expanding beyond ourselves into the rest of the world. And we can be mindful that our presence in any situation or interaction has an effect, an influence. So for that influence to be beneficial, we need to clean up our act to become a wholesome person. A wholesome person is trustworthy, a person who enters the room without an agenda, without a chip on their shoulder, one who has a genuine interest in others and not so much in themselves. Now, he says the combination of shamatha and vipassana produces wholesomeness. That is how to develop an enlightened person. So here we are again, practice. Shamatha, vipassana, this is the practice that continues all the way to enlightenment, as John was just saying. And it is how we cut through our preoccupations and our dreams and our attachments. He says, joining shamatha precision and calmness with Vipassana awareness brings the realization that the world is not attacking you. The world is no longer an obstacle. In fact, the world is actually helpful to you. Now, this kind of set me back a bit. I had to think about this one. But you see, as long as we're hunkered down in our cocoon of self-involvement, watching ego's entertainments, the constant play of this that goes on, our viewpoint is always going to be me versus the world. That unpredictable world that keeps interfering with my beautiful ideals, messing up my plans, poking holes in my treasured beliefs. That world that is just not right for me. Life is so unfair. And so, from this viewpoint, our responses will naturally be aggressive, unwholesome. So, to the extent that we become liberated from individual suffering, the Hinayana, we begin to see the world around us more clearly. Our awareness expands. We become less concerned with ourselves, less self-centered, and all of this undermines aggression. the heading of the next part of this reading is Mindfulness Freedom from Aggression, which is another thing that I had to think about for a while. But what aggression is he talking about? Now, it may seem obvious that aggression has no place in bodhicitta, that the influence of aggression is destructive. But what is this aggression? He says, when you practice mindfulness at the Mahayana level, instead of simply trying to be mindful, you also have to tame your aggression. The more you tame your aggression, the more mindfulness you develop. So we usually think of aggression in dramatic terms, like attacking someone, backing someone into a corner and shouting at them or something. But the aggression that most of us carry and experience and express is not so overt. It can come up as in self-doubt, self-criticism, that voice saying, I'm not doing this right. These are all forms of aggression. He says, the more you tame your aggression, the more mindfulness you develop. So any aggression toward ourselves undermines mindfulness. Now he says, generally speaking, aggression tends to come up in the form of boredom. So I think we all experience boredom in the form of restlessness. This is hot boredom, feeling antsy. It's hard to sit still. That restlessness, restless in our body and in our mind, is experienced as boredom. In fact, our body may seem to have a mind of its own, like it's hard to sit still, but actually it's intimately connected with the mind. But why? I mean, if there is nothing to do, why can't we simply do nothing? So, where is this boredom coming from? And it can simply be our habitual patterns reasserting themselves. That we have a lifetime of always finding things to keep ourselves busy, to keep the mind busy, to entertain ourselves. It can be uncomfortable for us to try to just sit because we feel we always need to be doing something. And that can lead to a kind of internal debate. I have other things to do. This is a waste of time. I'm just lost in thought. What's the point of this anyway? This is actually aggressive. We're not accepting the state of things. We may look for an escape, some way out of this, like pick and choose parts of the practice, or try to come up with a way to finesse it so it suits me a little better, or look for an escape hatch, to a secret passageway to nirvana, to heaven, to Shangri-La, like the wardrobe in Narnia. We think that we'll find some special elevated state. This is all aggression. I mean, after all, we're just sitting here. All of this is the work of ego. It's always pushing. So in meditation, there can be an underlying feeling that my experience needs to be different, as simple as that. So instead of the light touch of recognizing the activity of the mind, we begin to exert ourselves to achieve an experience of the perfect meditation, whatever that is. So, and at that point, we have the attitude of someone working on a treadmill, because things are not as they should be, as I need them to be. I don't possess what I should have in my possession. I'm not doing this right. I'm not right. There is a problem with me I need to fix. because things are not as they should be, and I can't accept that. So we then feel compelled to change the world, change ourselves to make things right. This is aggression. The inability to accept, to see the world and ourselves as it is. And the antidote is shamatha. To start with, the simple practice of recognizing that you're thinking, dreaming, and waking up again and again, we begin to understand the nature of all of this mental activity because we see it over and over again. And by seeing these thoughts, these feelings, and not fighting them, acceptance develops. And we begin to develop maitri, loving kindness to ourselves in the beginning. And aggression is tamed. This works in both directions. Just developing mindfulness tames aggression. And also, taming aggression facilitates mindfulness. Now, in the reading, we come to awareness, freedom from ignorance. So, we can suppress aggression or tame aggression, but we need to wake up. And Vipassana is the vehicle for that. To be aware, he says, of what is around you, you have to become less self-centered. You see, as long as we see the world through the filter of how does this affect me? Excuse me. Just had to go. As long as we see the world through the filter of how does this affect me, we are like someone stumbling around in a fog breaking things. Really. Developing Vipassana awareness in daily life is not about achieving some elevated state. In fact, it's not about achieving anything. Striving in itself can be a form of aggression. So in the Hinayana, I am developing my Vipassana awareness, and that is about me. He says in the Mahayana, you are simply trying to pay attention to the environment around you. Simply being present, awake to the vivid display of immediate experience. I was looking into Vipassana and I found back in the Hinayana volume actually something he said about it, which I thought was interesting. He said, Vipassana awareness arises from several different conditions, but fundamentally, it comes from being without aggression. And then he goes on, the definition of Dharma altogether is the absence of aggression. So, taming aggression with mindfulness clears the fog of self-centeredness and reveals the larger world of Vipassana awareness. Taming aggression makes it possible to be fully present without an agenda and to wake up. And so I think this is the heart of the matter, that wholesomeness is being free from aggression and being fully present and engaged. John?
Thank you, Barry. Okay. Chapter 6 is carrying on this same theme, these themes. It's called Expanding Your Practice. Chapter 7, excuse me. expanding your practice. He starts out by noting that the Hinayana, the beginning stage of the path, is achievement-oriented. But in the Mahayana stage of the path, you view the journey less as traveling and more as a way of life, a way of being, rather than getting something or getting somewhere. It's really a matter of how you are now, here. He says that it's the difference between being a Boy Scout and a soldier, like Boy Scout or Girl Scout, that in the first stage, the Hinayana, you're training. But in the Mahayana stage, you're being. You're being what you've trained to be. And the training, of course, was shamatha and vipassana. At the Mahayana stage, there's greater vision. At the Mahayana stage, it's what you're focused on is freedom from suffering, your own liberation. At the Mahayana stage, what you're focused on is the beauty and living in this world and participating in it and being of service, of constant service and interaction with the people, the sentient beings around you. So the path begins to expand beyond one's own individuality. The Mahayana outlook is based on immense prajna, which is intellect or clear seeing, and immense compassion. With the immense prajna, you begin to see the world in a very different way, a new reality. What you're seeing, what you're beginning to contact is the twofold egolessness. This means that you've begun to discover, as you did in the Hinayana stage of the path, that I is just a fiction. That's the first egolessness. I is just a story that we tell from time to time, and which is not really necessary. But when we tell it, it's so compelling. It seduces us into belief and into all the anxieties that constellate around I. But that just that, when it stops, when you come back to mindfulness, you let go of the story and you come back to something utterly simple, like the breath, or just now. That when you do that, I evaporates. It's just nowhere to be found. And then we begin to understand the second fold, egolessness, which is going to be dealt with even more in the next chapter. And this is even more profound. This is the egolessness of other. That none of this that surrounds us, that is us, has any true being. It's all arising and passing away instantaneously in this present moment. It doesn't exist even for an instant. It's a constant display. A constant display. That's why these analogies that they keep using, that they use over and over, like that this world arises like images in a mirror, like reflections on water. It's a constant, like images on your computer screen, a constantly changing and disappearing display, which is the second fold egolessness. And they talk about it in the first, at the level of the Hinayana, you begin to realize this in the manner in which I just described it. And in the second stage of it, in the Mahayana, they talk about the second half of the second fold egolessness. And it's actually, you get 1.5, and then you get 2. And the second half is, they describe, the words are, I'm jumping ahead, the absence of perceiving itself. That this thing that we think of as the perceiver, me, I, has no real existence. That this constant display is a presentation, it's a gift, it's a vivid, ongoing, never-ending, vivid, I repeat, luminous display without any essence to it. And when we begin to realize that, then we begin to realize there is no perceiver. There's no act of perceiving. And so that's the beginning of realizing the twofold egolessness. There's a lot more to be said about that. And both of these are really what are developed in the Mahayana. Even much further, the Hinayana, we begin to understand egolessness of self, and a bit, sort of conceptually, the fact that nothing actually has any true being because it's so impermanent. And in the Mahayana, we begin to live it. We begin to experience it in this vivid, constant, beautiful, glowing presentation. Additionally, because all of this is about coming completely present, we are utterly responsive. And so others begin to become much more important as they appear and make their demands. They say hello, and we have to say hello back, and more. And they become much more important than me and my little concerns. We begin to give up this constant self-involvement, where Barry was just talking about aggression. As long as we're involved with the self, with the I, we're constantly involved in acts of aggression. We think the world should be this way, not be that way. We commit acts of violence in one way or another, emotional violence. Something goes awry. Something goes wrong in our experience. I'll be confessional. Jim Rinpoche always said, don't be confessional, but this is too good an experience to an illustration. Yesterday, Chase Bank saw some what they regarded as suspicious activity in my account, and they shut it down. I couldn't access it on the internet, couldn't do anything with it. So I called them up. I must have spent 2 or 3 hours on hold, undoing this problem, which was not a problem, it was a mistake on their part. And in it, I was fuming. I was angry. I was thinking, I'm going to leave Chase. I'm going to go find another bank. I've got all these thoughts. This is the aggression that we fall into. I mean, with that's a rather, perhaps a somewhat extreme example, but we can do it all the time with just little things. Instead of just dealing with it sanely, sensibly, clearly, we think, this shouldn't be that way. How dare they do this to me? As though there's something personal in it. So the next thing is that to work for others, to enter this world of the Mahayana, and to be available, we have to develop composure. That's the word he says. He uses basic stability. And that this is produced by the training in shamatha and vipassana, because in shamatha, we come back from those daydreams, those dreams of they're terrible, I'm right, whatever it might be. And we let them go. And in Vipassana, not only do we let them go, but we see clearly what it is that's happening and what needs to be done and what our responsiveness needs to be. So through shamatha Vipassana, we achieve a stable mindfulness, tranquility, and peace, and precise awareness. We're able to pay attention to what is actually going on instead of being lost in the dreams of aggression and anger, whatever it might be. And going slightly beyond not causing harm. You see, in the Hinayana, the ethic is don't cause harm. In the Mahayana, because we're so open, because we're so available, because we're so ready, we're constantly involved, constantly in response. That responsiveness, that involvement with love, with enjoyment, with joy, is what is meant by compassion. Compassion, again and again, is not feeling sorry for. Compassion is open-heartedness, joyful participation, love. So he says, with shamatha vipassana, you have become like a young thoroughbred horse. I think a lot of Stephanie, who's not here today, is so involved with horses. somewhat responsive and well-trained. We have an understanding of egolessness and the Four Noble Truths. And what this means is, egolessness means that we understand how to be here. And the Four Noble Truths means we understand what to avoid, the ego. And we don't go into automatic reactivity, stories, the desire. You see, the thing is about this aggression is that its main purpose is to entertain, however painful it might be, I. These stories about, they shouldn't have done that to me. How dare they do that to me? I'm going to do this and then and that and that. And it gives this I a big job. It keeps it involved. It's very painfully entertaining. And so really what we're giving up is that entertainment. Coming back to calm, open, clear awareness, which doesn't mean that you're lackadaisical. You could be very energetic. So in the Mahayana, it's necessary to develop a greater level of commitment to awareness of now. We're really shifting our loyalty from the entertainment of our dreams, which are full of passion, aggression, and stupidity. From that to this awareness of the present moment here, as it arises, it's almost, you can almost touch this present moment. It's so full of the phenomenal world. So he says, you stop trying to make things meaningful to you in your own samsaric style, so you become soft and gentle and pliable. There are many ways to connect to all kinds of sentient beings. And when he says this in that thing, I think of him and how he lived his life in constant interaction with his students from the moment he woke up in the morning to the moment he closed his eyes at night. There was no other purpose except to be there for them, to be responsive to them, to be available. What an example. So first you tame your mind by means of shamatha, which literally means that you begin to develop the reflex, the ability, the muscle to come back from these neurotic dreams of aggression and passion, fear, hope, all of it, to the simple awareness of this present moment. And then you train your mind by means of Mahayana contemplative practices, such as Tonglen, exchanging yourself for others. And then he says, as well as by the actual field work of helping others in daily life, however you may do it. You might take a job that's a helping profession. You may just be available to the people in your orbit. But the power of the real life interactions with an open mind, giving up your preconceptions, that is very, very valuable. So with Vipassana, you're tamed, you're beginning to, or more than beginning to, tame your neurosis, your constant need for aggressive entertainment. And with Vipassana, you're developing intelligence and insight, and the world is actually changing. Vipassana goes from the beginning of the path to the end, but its name changes as the understanding of the world that it reveals changes. So when you begin to really understand the twofold egolessness in the Mahayana, the egolessness of I and the egolessness of other, that neither are real, have any true existence, then this is called shunyata meditation. emptiness meditation. And it's the same practice that we do here of just coming back and resting our awareness in now, in this space here. But the more thoroughly we do it, the more our understanding of what this world is changes. Through both, you know how to hear the teachings to understand the Dharma properly, and you are learning how to relate to others properly. Relating to others properly means to relating to them clearly, with a clear mind and an open heart, rather than through preconception, through aggression. He says you have to follow the example of your teacher and work for others. When you do that, both you and other people benefit. You benefit because you're coming into reality, coming out of this painful, aggressive state of mind, fearful, self-protective, into openness and enjoyment of the world. And others benefit because you're there for them, and it's so delightful for them to interact with you. He gives a warning that if you become a do-gooder, kind of, helping others, you can be getting ego gratification from it. Like, look at me, I'm being a big deal. So there's a warning there, a caveat. But still, the basic practice is to be willing to open constantly, to be exposed. What that means is that you're not protecting yourself. You don't go into situations with a hidden agenda of keeping yourself inviolate, of keeping yourself sort of separate, sort of watching yourself, like, I'm going to be a good person here, I'm going to be happy here. You give that up and you just go in the moment, here, ready to respond, to be present. He says, when you feel tired of working for others, at that point you have to extend yourself further. You have to be a completely steady person, and at the same time, a completely energetic person. It's what's required. It's just demanded of us. It's the natural way to be. It's not like we're following some kind of goody-goody two-shoes set of instructions. It's just the way the world works. When you realize that not only can you achieve individual salvation for yourself, freedom from suffering, but you can be awakened further, you are joyous, and you look forward to such wakefulness. It's because we feel that we are beginning to enter into the real world. And it's right here, waiting for us, available, compelling. And in it, we change. That neurotic, unhappy, wishing things were otherwise, I evaporates. And instead, there's this beautiful, open, constantly changing, vivid presentation, which is so beautiful, and arising all by itself and passing. He says, wakefulness, coming back from dreams, is the loss of ego, the loss of self, the me-ness of it, the I-ness of it. When you lose ego, that ego-centeredness, you naturally and automatically develop an awareness of others. It just happens. I is such a distraction. And when that goes, you're available, you're open, you're here. Your awareness is ready for whatever presents itself. And a more sympathetic attitude toward them. A keenness and liking for other people develops, so you don't need privacy to lock yourself away. Instead, you prefer to enjoy yourself by being with others and helping them. I think he's describing himself. You're not helping others because you feel sorry for them, or to confirm that your existence is important, but because you have developed the quality of awake awareness and upliftedness, which is the real celebration and appreciation of the beauty and power of this world as it arises now. This is the Mahayana. Wow. So we can have a discussion if you like. Philip.
So I love this part on page 57, where he's talking about the transition. And the first paragraph, he says, sitting practice is important, but attachment to sitting practice can become a danger. And much more the last sentence in that paragraph. Everywhere you sit does not have to be a meditation cushion. And that
Tell me more about what that means to you.
the whole idea of getting off your cushion and into the world that you live in, to become fully engaged. And ironically, it says we leave ourselves behind, that we're able to become fully engaged.
What do you think enables that, to leave yourself behind?
You got to start someplace, and shamatha is what enables that. But once that's there, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it in this chapter that he talks about oryoki?
A little bit, I think.
Yes.
He does, right?
Yes.
Oryoki is interesting. Some of you may not know what it is. It's in the Zen tradition, they do sesshin. Now, sesshin is a month-long sitting practice, and you sit all day, every day, and all the meals are taken in a ritual style, which is called oryoki. And you have your own set of bowls and chopsticks and a spoon and some things to clean the bowls with. And the food is served in a ritual style, and you receive it in a ritual style, and you eat it in a ritual manner, and then you clean your bowls in a ritual manner, and so forth. The amount of detail in oryoki is mind-boggling. And Rinpoche loved it. And so we incorporated it. If you ever do a datan, a longer, that's a month-long sitting practice, which is our version of a sesshin, a Zen sesshin, it will be served probably oryoki style. And the thing is that he talks about this, and he says that when you become completely present, what you have to do, I mean, in this ritual, it's just the endless detail of it, I evaporates. There's no room. It's just it's like a little story that goes on the side, but you don't have time for it because you're too busy with all these little details of the ritual. I remember one time during a datan, we had a Q&A about all kinds of things. And this fellow raises his hand and he says, I want to ask a question about oryoki. And the question was, duck, duck, goose. That's what he felt like when he was doing oryoki, like musical chairs. Like he just, oh, so much detail. And you got to do this, and then you have to do that, and then that. There are some real oryoki mavens in our Sangha. Roland Cohen is one, if you ever get a chance to learn from him. He knows, wow, so much detail, way beyond me. And at first I hated oryoki, and then I got to really love it. It happens. It's funny. But the main point is that the more you come present, and that's the point he was making. He was talking about Joe, what did he say? Joe, not Joe Dokes.
Joe Schmidt
Joe Schmidt. That was his famous sort of John Smith figure. And when Joe Schmidt comes present, ego evaporates. Same for all of us. Thanks, Philip. Anybody? Karen Sue.
So when you were talking about being present and being in the now, I was really fortunate today to spend a number of hours outside sitting on the lawn with my dog. And when you were talking about open-heartedness and being right in the now, that's all he did. All those hours was just, he was in bliss, and he was just right in the moment. And it was that when you were talking about that, that's the vision that came to me from this very wonderful, fun experience that I had with him today. It was quite interesting. Something so simple.
Thank you.
Really wonderful.
Thanks. Any comments, Barry?
No? Tony.
Thanks, Barry, and thanks, John. It's fascinating for me. I've been in recovery for a lot of years, and the direct relationship between the Dharma, the talks today, and what is written here, is palpable. In recovery, we say, in order to keep it, you have to be able to give it away. We also say, jokingly but seriously, things like, I don't think much of myself, but it's all I think about, which is kind of humorous, but right to the point. But so much of recovery is also dealing with the subliminal aggression that you feel towards yourself. And this has been a tremendous reminder. And it just reinforces for me again the combination of 12-step recovery and this particular Buddhist path have really helped me so much in the years. Thank you again, John and Barry. Thank you.
I'm going to invite Laura and Michael to also comment whenever you feel inspired. Yeah, I constantly, everybody, the synchronicity between 12-step and Buddhism seems so powerful and apparent.
Yeah. I saw it in my own mother, John. She was sick, and my own mother had bad alcoholism, and she overcame it to be a much better person for the rest of her life afterwards. She became a teacher and a much more enlightened person. So I think there must be a very strong parallel between the two, and I'm sorry for cutting in.
That's fine. Thank you, Rose. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Kirk had his hand raised.
Yeah, I think what Tony brought up is kind of brings up the question I have, not really a question, just maybe an observation of that very fine line between all of this, that the this idea of boredom, entertainment, aggression, and this ritual of oryoki. I notice in myself that I think there's two things going on. There's a place where I'm in full concentration with the act, in my case of doing my craft or my art. And at the same time, I use that tool also as my entertainment. So I think both are going on. I think there's a point where I'm so focused that I lose myself. The ego drops away. But at the same time, I use that same act as a way of bolstering up my ego. And this is what I have to do that's more important than sitting, more important than being still. And so it's just that there's a very fine line between the two. And you know what Tony mentioned, brought that up as well. That I think we only know in ourselves which side of that line we're on. Thanks.
It's about our intention, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think remembering the intention, behind the act.
Yeah, we could have intentions that help us be awake, and we could have intentions to take us away. And it might look the same to somebody else. But like you said, if you're mindful of your intention.
That's a good point, is being mindful, because the act is the same, but the intention can be polar opposites.
Yeah, he makes this point about being of help to others. And then you could develop an ego about that you are of service to others, and that you're a big deal, and a virtuous person. I mean, it's so subtle, isn't it? And it creeps in for all of us. But I think the only thing is to just keep at it with mindfulness and awareness.
I knew a friend of mine years ago who was a very attractive woman, actually. And she had this policy that if anyone wanted to do her a favor or do something for her, she had to make it very clear that they were going to receive nothing in return. And I thought it was so interesting. It just would deflate people, She would say, that's fine, but I'm not going to thank you. It was really interesting.
Philip, there's another comment.
So I wanted to come back to Kurt and to Laura in your talks of parallelism and intention. And I spent a lot of time as a fiction writer, and I had a teacher once explained to me that the reason my stories were not finished was because they were not ready to be given away, because here and there were still traces of me within them. And it's not just her, and it's not just me. Faulkner used to say, when you think you're done, you need to go back and kill your darlings. You need to take yourself out of your art entirely if you're going to give the art away. And we are, after all, only half of the composition, right? The receiver of the art, the reader or the viewer, they compose the second half. So it seems to fit with what you guys were wrestling with.
Well, thank you, Philip. I think that's so important to keep in mind, that other aspect of it. There's the viewer, and that's, I think, the beautiful side of the giveaway, And when we realize that, I think it's easier to let go of the ego. Yeah, thank you.
Valerie.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. Thank you for this discussion. I have heard that about kill your darlings. I write, and I don't think I've ever understood it until now, what I just heard. So thank you.
I'm saying ditto.
Oh, Judith writes fiction as well. Absolutely, and poetry, both.
Yeah.
We have so many creative people. Roberta, I was wondering if you had any insights on this. Don't mean to put you on the spot. You're muted.
So much wonderful information. And
Yes. Because the separation between an actor and what he does and his relationship with the character it's a very fine line, but it's a very hard line. And I must say my head is kind of spinning with this information, because to give up that line and to give up your ego and step into somebody else's world, I suppose is what could be defined as such an act of, because that character cannot be, cannot exist without you, but it can also be destroyed by you, by your ego. You are more important than the character and the life of the character that you are giving life to, a presence to. Because on the other side is the person who's watching it, and they're judging all the time. And that can make you defensive, self-conscious. Yeah, this is a great conversation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Tony, you got something
Can
else?
I double dip? Yeah, I just remembered I had a quote from Khaled Hosseini, and he said that writing fiction is the act of weaving a series of lies to arrive at a greater truth. And I thought, I wrote that down. That was really meaningful, weaving together a series of lies to arrive at a greater truth. So thank you for letting me double dip.
Feel free. Anybody else want to single or double dip? It's dessert time. Dan, I was wondering if you had any thoughts on this that we do.
I certainly got carried away with what Tony was saying too. But in terms of recovery, for sure, and we've talked about it, but to me, I don't think Tony's heard me say it, but I've said it here. The single most thing that I hear from recovery, or that Bill Wilson actually wrote, was called "Freedom from the Bondage of Self." And bondage is pretty aggressive, right? Right.
Yeah.
And that's the most aggressive thing. And I was also thinking about something I heard Tsokti Rinpoche say many, many times. he talks about beautiful monsters, because he's talking about your neuroses, that you have to, yes, they could be monsters, but you have to accept them just as they are, see clearly. And today I was listening to him, and he emphasized he paused between beautiful and monsters, and then he said, and I just paused. It was like a long pause. He said beautiful, and then like 30 seconds later he said monsters. He said, I'm saying it like this too. He goes, because people always hear me say monsters, and I don't think they hear the beautiful part. And he says the people, we talk about self-love, but he said in some ways he has a hard time understanding that, because they don't even have a word for that in Tibetan, because they don't have to go that way. They don't have to. He says it's very foreign to him. He understands it now because of working so much, in the West, but he said that was hard. That was a hard concept for him. He said, love is just love. We love. You don't love me more than you love yourself. How come you could love me, but you can't love yourself? He said that's just, that division doesn't exist in the language there.
Well, anyone else has something to contribute? You're welcome.
Yes, it just occurred to me. I mentioned a while back about our T-boy of an aide, Iris, and how suddenly I gave her flowers, even though she's just an impossible character. And because I thought, oh, I don't know that anyone has ever given this unfortunate character flowers. Well, yesterday I was in the supermarket up here in New Hampshire, and I was about to pay for a bunch of flowers for the house. And the person behind me in line, a young guy wearing camo pants, with his mother, obviously, said, no, I'm going to buy those flowers for you. I was astounded. And it just took my breath away. A complete stranger. I'm going to buy these flowers for you. And I was astonished. But sitting here and remembering the business with Iris, it almost feels like it was given back to me. It was really strange. I mean, just, this gratuitous giving. I'm not sure exactly how this relates to this, but maybe just the being in the moment of it. Anyway.
Thank you, Judith. That's wonderful.
Well, you guys were fabulous tonight. I thank you so much. Everybody.
Really. Yeah, I feel like we're entering into a period of kindness and awareness. Kindness and awareness. Call it compassion and prajna. Kindness and awareness. This is really the Mahayana. I'm sorry, somebody was about to say something.
I was just going to say that to Judith, that I had a similar experience once in a lineup. And the woman behind me, I was with a fellow actor, and we were, getting our groceries together. And she said to the person behind the counter, I'm going to pay for this. And we were utterly stunned and said, why? She said, I just feel like giving you something.
Yeah. It is an amazing experience in a
Yeah.
supermarket line.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Robert DiVincenzo, and then Sue, Karen Sue.
Good evening. The word availability really rang out. Availability really rang out for me tonight, and I thought of it again when Karen was talking about her dog, how available her dog was to the nature, to the experience of nature. But the dog is so much nature, so much one with it, you know, not like such a domesticated life that we act out. That's not a part of it. And earlier you had read about availability and response, and knowing what to avoid, and not having an automatic reactivity. For me, the availability is a two-edged sword. Becoming open to the point that when we get into an environment, I become the environment. It's like I feel it so much and not react to it, but to know that it's there. It's a blessing to know that I have a choice and not just have an automatic reaction to go along with what I like to call the mob of the mind. It's a mob, the mind mob identifies with the mob that's out there. And there's so much of that out there now. To not be engaging with it. To have an option to choose not to be involved with it is a blessing. I came across something this morning after a dream I had, and it was a contextual thing. Like I'd rather do something else, or I'd rather be something else. And it was so strong. I realized that there was so much of my life that was held in this, the water was held in this glass, and it was just took that shape of I'd rather be someplace else, or I'd rather do something else. And what I realized was I could actually flip that around. When there's a distraction, I could also say, well, I'd rather do something else. What else? How about just this right now? Just this one thing.
Thank you, Robert. Karen Sue, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to share that when Judith told her flower story, I was reminded by when you used to drive on the highway and you used to go up to the toll booth to pay the toll. And I would say a good 2 or 3 times when I would be going back to Syracuse to school, I would pull up to the toll booth and the toll taker would say, well, the person before you just paid your toll. And it's that same kind of, and it happened to me, like I said, probably 3 times. And I just found that feeling to be so interesting that it didn't make me, but it inspired me to say, I could help somebody else feel like I'm feeling right now. And isn't that isn't that like amazing? And I will never, ever know who that person was. And that just moves it to a total another level. I didn't get to thank them. It didn't matter. They were just extending that gesture. So thank you, Judith, for reminding me about that.
Philip, do you have something else you'd like to say?
Yeah, real quick, I just want to make this link between aggression, which we've been talking about in the beginning, and generosity, which we're talking about at the end. And generosity is the antidote for aggression. It's the weapon that we have to deal with aggression.
Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. Well, friends, anybody else before we close down? We'll have a discussion group tomorrow night. I encourage you to come if you have any inclination. I think there are lots of fun, and it's wonderful. We get a great feeling of community. When people raise their hands if they agree with that, so that other people will know that it's not just me. Look at all those hands going up. So if you feel at all inspired to come, please do. It's really, really wonderful. Everybody speaks. It's a little easier than here for some reason. So let's end then by dedicating the merit earned through our study and practice to the benefit of all sentient beings. How appropriate, huh? This is the Mahayana spirit. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Wonderful.
Thanks,
John.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Wonderful.
Take care.
John,
Wow.
all those.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, John. Thanks.
And everybody.
Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barrett. Thanks, Sean. It was wonderful tonight. I learned a lot.
Me too.
Thank you, Robert.
Really, Robert. Yeah.
Thank
See you
you,
soon.
Barry. Thanks, John.
And Robert DiVincenzo. Yes, we have two Roberts here.
To Robert.
Thank you for your contribution. Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. I'm going to close it down.
Hi, Peter.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Peter.